After creating an album that defined a summer and made her a household name, Charli XCX has taken a left turn. She is back with Wuthering Heights, a companion record for Emerald Fennell's adaptation of the classic novel. The record itself is very daring. I think it's a jarring follow-up to Brat. It's a literalist, it's elegant, it's a brutalist record that's listenable on its own, but also very tied to the film. It feels esoteric without the context. Still, Finn Keen, Charli, and her collaborators deliver what I consider to be the best part of the movie, the soundtrack. You guys know the drill. I will discuss this album and give my honest thoughts on the record before going track by track and assigning a score. I'm also going to talk about the movie, so there might be spoilers at some point. If you haven't seen the movie or you don't care, it's just a warning ahead of time. Overall thoughts, last year Charli spoke a lot about what a follow-up to Brat would be like. She rejected the pressure of making another zeitgeist-defining record, saying that this next album would probably be a flop and she's down for that. She stated that she was never going to make a record like Brat again, and she got her chance to do that when Emerald Fennell approached her to compose a track for Wuthering Heights, and one song eventually became this concept album. Before I did this review, I wanted to see the movie. I think the album feels so in line with the aesthetics of the film. At times, it's very lush and decadent, and then it's also cold and muddy and haunting. The production is unafraid of diving into industrial gothic sounds with the strings, but it also employs Charli's signature electronic sounds. It shouldn't work because it's very antithetical to itself, but it melds the concepts very well. I consider this to be a sister record to True Romance, per Charli's own words. Justin Raisin, who was a producer and writer on that debut record back in 2013, came back to work on this. Chains of Love, one of the singles, evokes her work on Stay Away, but it's very elevated and matured in such a way that Charli's not reheating leftovers. I also felt like this album touched on motifs from Self-Titled, with some of the tracks reminding me of Don't Wanna Know or Thoughts. Something that adds to this throwback energy is a Genius feature on Eyes of the World with Sky Ferreira, who previously showed up on Charli's Cross You Out. That track is one of the highlights. I feel like it's a continuation of Sky's I Blame Myself thematically, while also feeling like a harsher reprise of Charli's Set Me Free melodically. Also cool enough, Joe Keery, aka Joe, contributed a track for the album Funny Mouth. And of course, the legendary John Cale of Velvet Underground was on that viral lead track House. This album is very much a brainchild of Charli's, despite its insistence of serving the film verse as a tool to connect the audience with the story. It aces that, but also the way that Charli manages to unrestrain herself and get lost in these instrumentals using her voice more instrumentally than ever before is ear candy. On Brat, sometimes her voice felt ornamental to the music itself, whereas here it stands as a unifying and ghostly spirit, almost narrating scenes. I actually found this kind of record to be more faithful to the novel's tone and gravity than the film itself, but that's another discussion that I will talk about later. Lyrically, the songs feel a little sparse and a little on the nose and very earnest about their contents, but they really carry those points across. For example, on Alters, which is one of my favorites on this entire album, Charli flips Harry Nilsson's classic One, saying, "One is not the loneliest number," to highlight being single is better than being trapped in a bad relationship. Many of these lyrics, tell rather than show, painting stark imagery by saying aloud what we're supposed to see. If there's any track, though, that I feel should break out, it's Dying For You, which has this frenetic energy from How I'm Feeling Now. Initially, it kind of felt unfinished to my ear, but then the strings came in. It reminded me of Sorry If I Hurt You, which is a deep cut off Crash that I think everyone should re-listen to. It's a classic for me. I only wish that we had that orchestral remix of Everything Is Romantic from the trailers. That would have been a nice little bonus track. Lengths-wise, this is only 35 minutes. Some of the tracks probably would have benefited from being longer or drawing things out, but it's forgivable because at the end of the day, this is a soundtrack. But for a few fleeting moments, like some of this stuff is the most adventurous music I feel Charli's ever made. Absolutely not bad at all for being a side project. Charli's known for moving on from concepts quickly, from sounds, but it's very cyclical. I was shocked that A.G. Cook didn't contribute to this album, but it was nice seeing Finn Keen take over and take center stage as a co-producer. It's just also a dream to see Charli take back True Romance and have it have this spiritual, timely return through this post-brat period. Just a quick warning again, the track by track in the film discussion after will have some spoilers, so if you don't mind, here we go. House with John Cale, thrilling avant-garde opener that eventually did become a meme in its own right. I think the track is an anti-commercial, string-heavy haunting hymn that opens with some spoken word from Cale. It's a poem in the context of the movie that touches on both Heathcliff and Catherine's predicaments. The chorus, I think I'm gonna die in this house, it's about the inherent trauma that both of these characters face being bound to this toxic relationship that's, ruined by their homes and their upbringings and the house itself. The house is this cage that is represented by an anguishing synth that's very corrosive, insane, and dreadful. It's combative. It's supposed to let us know that this is a tragedy. Wall of Sound is a track that plays with Kathy's inner world of pressure and restraint, framing them as a wall of sound. The instrumental forms this barrier that's so loud it nearly drowns out Charli's voice. Verse 2 plays with love and hate, becoming this monolithic feeling, the sounds growing as she tries to fight against it in the chorus. I think the bridge sees her channeling Catherine's inner need to validate herself with Heathcliff's love, but it's somehow not enough. I found the outro purposefully muffled to illustrate that the sounds have won out, the strings have ensnared her and cut her off. Dying for You is an absolute banger of a track. I think it's the most conventional track structurally. I think it's a conversationally written track diving into Kathy's psyche, her tragic destiny. The allusions to nooses against her favorite jewelry or how he's the poison she'd drink twice to ensure that she died. The chorus is the weight of this yearning that she has, knowing that she has to be with Edgar and not Heathcliff. The bridge is this fugue repetition against the beat that's danceable but also contrasted with the outro's emphasis on the words pain and torture. I kept waiting for the song to play in the movie. It was not in the film. Always Everywhere begins with this almost bridal and gothic flair to it. Charli paints the scene. Everywhere she roams, she hears his laughter in the rain. She just can't escape the storm. Oh god, like the chorus is heavy on melody, casting her refrain against, again, a wall of sound like she's struggling to still break free. Verse 2 touches on how Heathcliff is still home, even though he's disappeared far away. She's just in this lurch of nostalgia. If I recall correctly, this song played as the credits rolled, and I thought it was a perfect way to kind of like end cap the movie. Chains of Love I loved before I saw the film. I think it's really the film's heart in many ways. The verse, from Kathy's perspective, captured the peak of yearning. I thought the chorus just sweepingly covers how bound she feels to her love, how breathless she is and aware that love is cruel and perverse, and it's just breaking her. Her only relief is knowing that she'll be the shadow that follows him always, and the sequence in the film that uses it is my favorite sequence in the entire film. I think it captured the period where she was supposed to be happy with Edgar, but just kept on thinking and dreaming of Heathcliff so well. Out of Myself is this thrilling, sort of synthy track that's about the euphoria and joy that this love brings her from like a carnal place. I found this one unique because she's not drowned by the wall of sound. She sounds more unrestrained working with the instrumental. She has control because she's free of her mind. The chorus speaks to the physicality of this relationship, and put the rope between my teeth is like a dare to take from her what he needs. I was shocked this one was not in the movie. I was expecting this to be the soundtrack to a certain scene sequence, but they didn't use this track. Open Up is a simple instrumental track, but it's very gorgeous. In the film, it plays twice over the film where Heathcliff leaves Kathy. In that context, it backdrops times where Kathy finally opens up and lets herself feel this aching pain and grief that would eventually consume her. Seeing Things was a fun little playful arrangement. I think this track has the narrator hallucinating or thinking that they're seeing the sight of their love. The instrumental and the strings emphasize each line like punctuation to the sentences. They mildly separate and untangle as these playful keys towards the end, and as those final words, find you, ring out. Alters is the strongest track on this record, hands down. I just adore the quality of Charli's voice on this track. I think it has a vulnerable, isolated sound to it. The instrumental never quite overtakes it on the chorus. At the altar of this lover, they're beginning to lose faith in this love that's become religion. I really thought that the one is not the loneliest number line. I thought that was like an awareness that it's not healthy. This track is supposed to be like a turning point mentally. I was really mad it was not in the final film. I was expecting this to play at a certain part. Like, I imagined it taking place during a chapter in the book that was not adapted. Eyes of the World with Sky Ferreira just has so many layers. I think the symmetry in the production, verse 1 having Charli in the front and Sky as backup, and then verse 2 flipping the equation is just really clever. Sky sounds so well suited for this production. She's like the perfect ghostly companion here, bringing this foreboding tone and body to the track. This track is about having a witness through the eyes of the world to set them free. The pre-chorus has kind of like Joan of Arc imagery with the flesh upon the cross, while the lines, "You're going to think the things you think about me anyway," I felt like it was a nod to "I Blame Myself." My Reminder has to be like a true romance outtake. It really just feels like a track that like was from that album. The reverb on the voice throughout especially. I interpreted this track as like Kathy's lament and understanding that she has failed even in her dying breaths. They could never love each other because they're just so different. Especially different from who they once were. They were family at one point and now they just can't get over themselves to return to that. So they've like grown apart and they're forever tied together and they're just in this limbo. The last track is Funny Mouth. I think it's an explosive finale. Despite not having much going on lyrically, the music tells much of the story, beginning very languidly before exploding into this like clashing drums against the strings. Everybody sleeps, wakes up, dreams, then breaks up. The chorus is like a plea that if there's something in there to fight for it. The question, will we be all right, crescendos into this like final stand against the wall of sound only to die against it. Love has lost because everyone eventually wakes up. In the film, this soundtracks Kathy and Heath's like secret affairs behind her husband's back. Here on the album, it's like the implied end. All in all, I really love the soundtrack much more than I love the movie, which I'll talk about in a bit. I thought that it was a brilliant mix of sounds and ideas, albeit kind of slavish to the actual story itself. The production is top-notch, and I think it's a great palate cleanser for what's next with Charli, so this is like an 8.3 out of 10. And if you stayed this long, instead of me doing an outro immediately, here are my thoughts on the movie. I wish I really liked this movie more. Visually, I found it very striking at some moments. It nearly tricked me into thinking that this was a better movie than it was. There is a shot on a horse with Heathcliff that I just thought was pure cinema, but having time to really sit with the movie, it fails both as an adaptation and as something that was meant to provoke. It's a movie that thinks it's much smarter than it actually is, but it comes off as like shallow fan fiction that sidesteps some pretty key themes and even like half of the story to try to feel like a Shakespearean tragedy. Suppose you don't even care about faithfulness and you came in expecting something with shock value or depravity, something for the sickos. It's much tamer than Saltburn. I think only the opening hanging sequence got the audience I saw this with to gasp. Otherwise, all the sensual scenes aren't nude or kinky at all. I'd argue that you actually see more skin and sex in Bridgerton than you'd get here. And at least there, you would get a story with characters that you sympathize with. This film is much more miserable than it is horny or boundary pushing. There's very little fun to this movie. It's played very straight as a tragedy, and tragedies really only work when you sympathize with the characters and their suffering. Everyone in this film is portrayed as insufferably cruel or just poorly written that you don't get their motivations entirely. Heathcliff, despite a really solid performance from Elodie, with the thin material aside, just lacks the subtext of being an other that some readers picked up on. His motivations for loving Kathy are very surface level, and while you get why Kathy loves him, there's very little to understand the other way around unless you've already read the book, or are just taking things at face value. One of the biggest sins for me was that the chemistry between Elodie and Robbie was just very lacking, which just killed this for me. I argue that Jacob had more chemistry with the comic relief Isabella, played by Alison Oliver, who was excellent. I thought she was a scene stealer. I'd say the only other person in this film who really got the assignment as to what this was as an adaptation or like as a provocation was Hong Chow, who plays Nellie Dean so hauntingly and ghastly. Nellie is this like pervading villain who really sets the plot in motion by deceiving and playing around with Kathy and Heathcliff. And she does it so well in this film. I adore Margot Robbie, but I think she was miscast here. I think she's too old to play this character believably. And there are moments where the script demands her to be this unlikable and messy character, but she just comes off as too charming and sweet to believe as wicked and deserving of her fate. Emerald Fennell's direction and natural eye for moments are hampered by very unskilled writing. I felt like the script held everything back. I thought it was a boring mess with very little replay value. The pacing was too slow. The film had no reason to be as long as it was. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes. And it really doesn't make use of the time at all. Ultimately, the best parts of this film were the costuming, the production design, which I thought was amazing, and of course Charlie's music, which I think stands stronger than the movie that it was supposed to be supporting. Just being nice because it's Valentine's Day weekend, I would give it like a soft 3 out of 5 stars. It's just a little boring for what you'd come to expect from someone who made Promising Young Woman and Saltburn. And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for tuning into this Wuthering Heights coverage thing. I wanted to talk about the album and the movie. I had fun listening to the album. I went out to see the movie on Friday in IMAX, and it was an experience. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Did you go see the movie? Did you just listen to the soundtrack? Did you enjoy both? Did you like one more than the other? A quick shout out to my members. Thank you so much for supporting this channel. I love you guys. Love you too, subscribers. I do this for you. I also have a Substack, which I'm plugging. Guys, like, this is where I'll post written word versions of my reviews in case you don't want to watch a video and you just want to read my words directly as they are. And I hope to see you guys next video.